Here we are in our home with our 3-month-old baby. A long time ago during the Industrial Revolution, there was someone who thought we were having too many of these. His name was Thomas Malthus, and today we're talking about Malthusians. I'm Mr. Coulter, and this is Human Geography. Today we're going to talk a lot about this guy, Thomas Malthus. He was the one who inspired Malthusian theory, which is our topic 2.6 in our AP Human Geography coursework. So Thomas Malthus was an English scholar. He was a cleric, an economist, and he looked at a lot of different things about the world. And he lived through the Industrial Revolution, which we know and are going to talk about in Unit 7, but we know was a time period where he invented things that made life easier for the people who lived in it. He studied population during that time. And as we learned about in the demographic transition model, that's when we saw population start to boom in that stage 2 of the demographic transition model. So when he saw this rapid growth, it shaped the way that he looked at the world. And it really gave him some strong opinions about what was going on. So Malthus came up with the theory as a demographer, which is someone who studies population. He saw the rapidly increasing population in London and in England at the time is something that wouldn't stop. So he thought that population growth was going to continue on and on exponentially. So he believed that food production, the way that we make food as a people, increases geometrically. And he thought that the population would increase exponentially. And he thought this would lead to disaster, that we'd hit a breaking point where there was not enough food to feed all of the people that lived on Earth. He argued that the government should step in or that an act of God should happen in order to stop population growth. He had a lot of very strong opinions about this. So he would be in the Dwight Schrute school of thought. There's too many people on this earth. We need a new plague, was what he said. So Malthus thought that this was his basic theory right here. If we look. In 1798, in his book, he wrote that population would continue to increase where the resources would increase at the rate they already did, and then eventually we'd hit a point of crisis when there were more people than food to feed those people. That is going above carrying capacity, which we learned about in an earlier topic. Thomas Malthus inspired a few of our ceiling tiles, so I put them mixed in throughout the video. So there were a lot of critics of Malthus's ideas. Since he lived through stage 2, he wasn't able to see that eventually we would transition to stage 3 and then 4, and for some countries 5, which meant that population growth was going to slow down, but he was right in the middle of it, so it's hard for him to see that eventually it would slow down. He only saw the massive growth. He also didn't predict that our agriculture industries would go through the revolutions of their own, which would allow us to grow more food than we ever thought possible before. So there were certain advances that allowed us to grow a lot more food. So he predicted that population would grow forever, which he was not correct about. And he also predicted that food wouldn't increase in its production, which we were able to do. So his theory is now thought of as out of date. People don't believe in Malthusian theory, that original Malthus theory that we would not have enough food to support us. But people do believe in the key principle of what he said. And that key principle was that there are not enough resources on Earth to sustain our growing population rate. So Neo-Malthusians, the new Malthus fans, are people who aren't saying food. They don't say that we're just going to run out of food. They say that there are a lot of resources on Earth, be it non-renewable resources or water or different things like that, that can't be sustained with our current population growth. And they call themselves Neo-Malthusians. They're saying that population growth is too fast for the amount of natural resources we have on Earth. One of the major proponents wrote a book called The Population Bomb. So he said, should we control population or will it be the doom of us if we are not able to? This was in the 1960s. He wrote this, and we're going to look at some excerpts from that book. And if you've heard this theory before, you might be familiar with it from actually an Avengers movie. In Infinity War, Thanos states very clearly this theory. He says, it's a simple calculus. This universe is finite. Its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. It needs correcting. I'm the only one who knows that, or at least I'm the only one who will act on it. And so Thanos, you could call a Neo-Malthusian because he believed that our resources were finite and that we had too many people alive. It inspired a couple of different ceiling tiles that I'll try to cut in right here to show you. But it's important for us to remember that in topic 2.6, we talked about Thomas Malthus. He lived through the Industrial Revolution, saw a rapidly growing population, and thought that it would never stop, and that our food could never sustain at the same level as our growth. He was wrong about it, but people have taken that idea and run with it in being Neo-Malthusians, which means that they believe not just food, but that our natural resources like non-renewable resources and water will eventually run out if we continue to have unchecked population growth. We'll continue to talk about this because he would see himself as someone who was limited to the environment, where possibilists would say that we'll come up with more solutions to get through it in the future. So that's one of our steps in our journey to better understanding our world. I'm Mr. Coulter, and that was Human Geography.